So welcome everybody to the 1% podcast. Today I have the legend that is Mr. Tony Brown on the podcast. We were just chatting offline. Tony was a client some years ago now. I think we finished up nearly 3 years ago, and Tony's been on quite the journey, both from a personal perspective from when we did the work together, but also for himself. And his story is pretty inspirational and really powerful for you all to hear. And the reason we have the 1% and what it's all about in this podcast is getting my clients, old clients, client alumni, but equally peers and guys that I know in my network that are doing work on themselves and the power that it has, and ultimately showing everyone that no matter where you are in life, sometimes you can be struggling. If we look inward and do the work, we can get great results and feel better about ourselves. And I think the more gents like us, we talk about these things and share it, the more it helps. And I know Tony's story is really powerful. So thank you, Tony. Really appreciate you coming on today. Before we kick off, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, a bit about you?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. What an introduction. I hope I can back it up. But I'm Tony Brown. At the minute, I'm a sort of I guess you would call a freelance consultant, but I guess I can unpack that a little bit more in a little while. But I predominantly focus on providing regulatory compliance advice to clients of mine, which are generally sort of fintechs and cryptocurrency businesses. So I worked in industry for about 20 years, sort of in-house and as a consultant for other firms. But for reasons I'm sure we'll get into, the last couple of years, I've kind of been acting a little bit more on my own back, working with people in my network that I already know and have worked with in the past, and try and add a little bit of value where I can. But also, like I said, kind of taking back a little bit more control over the work that I do and the clients that I work with. That's what I do these days. But I've also became a dad in the last couple of years since we worked together. Yeah. So that's probably been the biggest challenge of them all, to be honest with you, adapting to becoming a dad. But my daughter's 2 years old now, but we actually have another one due in about a month. So we're going to start all over again. But all of these things, all of these things are really relevant to the conversation that we're going to have, right? So.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So by all accounts, lots going on, your busy career, lots there, dad, family, all sorts going on. So let's jump off then, Tony. I think good place to start, rewinding probably 3.5-ish years, give or take now. Back when we first spoke, I think you'd maybe followed me for a bit on social media, seen some of my stuff on LinkedIn, and we connected, decided to reach out and have a chat. We ended up engaging. What was going on with you back then that made you decide to reach out and go, right, I want to do some work and make some changes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's a unique story, but lockdown was not good for me. I had, my line of work is quite sociable. I know it sounds boring dealing with laws and regulations, but there is a huge people facing part of the role. And obviously at the time I was a consultant, a traveling consultant who couldn't travel. So lockdown came, wasn't working as much, stuck in the house all the time, decided to do what most people do. You have these, Zoom quizzes with the family and, all these online kind of drinks parties and all the rest of it. But kind of as it developed, I kind of realized that that's all I was doing. I wasn't really doing much else. And yeah, I signed up to one of these Beer 52 things, where they send you these ales to try in the mail, and you convince yourself you've become some sort of beer connoisseur, but in reality you're chinning 12 strong ales on a Thursday night, waking up hungover on a Friday, having a few beers on a Friday, because why not? And the cycle goes on. So I guess fast forward a little bit, I'd put on a lot of weight. I'd probably been eating and drinking badly, to say the least, climbing the walls in terms of being stuck in the house, and then had to get back into a real work environment again, a professional environment. Admittedly, we did move to much more, the whole sector moved to much more of a remote working sort of style, but I was spending a week at home and then a week in London, a week at home, a week at London. And yeah, I just really found it difficult to come out of this sort of, I don't know, lockdown within a lockdown, within myself, to then suddenly have to turn up every day and not just be on show, but actually I stepped up into an even more senior role after lockdown. So not just the challenge of a new job and new responsibilities, but when you knew yourself that you weren't in the right place to do it, you just you default back to, okay, I'll self-medicate. So to answer your question, I had been following you for a while on LinkedIn, but it was one of your client testimonials. And I feel really bad that I can't remember the gent's name, but everything that he said, I was like, that's me. And to see his transition and his journey, even if it was just looking and feeling better, I said, like, I've been talking about this for a long time. I need to start kind of actually following through. So that's when we first started working together those years ago.
Yeah, and I think, like you said there, Tony, what you were experiencing, where you're at, was a very, not to belittle your situation, but a very common narrative from lots of people during lockdown, which was maybe the start, good intentions, maybe a bit healthier. Then it's like, really, sort of a bit of feral party time. And then all of a sudden it's like, shit, I've got to get back to real life here. But having built up a load of compounded habits that aren't serving you, so then you're thrust right back into that. And then trying to get back into that zone. And obviously you're very competent and you know exactly what you're doing. You're good at your job. And so you would do that. But if you've got these underlying habits and behaviours that aren't serving you underneath that, it's like trying to push a boulder up a hill. So you're like, you'll get the job done, but you're spent physically and mentally at the end of that and left reeling, right?
Yeah, and like that, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but at every person's point in their life, that's okay, right? But when I was then away all week and then coming back to an infant child and like my wife, and I've got no energy because I've been in London burning the candle, come back at the weekend, that's when they want to have quality time with us, and I'm just ghosting through it, and then knackered all the following week just to then get the energy to go and do it all again. So, I'm not going to lie, like I did fall into that as a routine, and you kind of normalize that behavior over a period of time until something happens and, you have to make a change. And I did start making those changes, the arrival of my daughter was a major, kick up the backside, so to speak. But lo and behold, you fall back into the same routine and you fall back into the same habits. And before you know it, you're dealing with all the stuff you were dealing with previously, and you've got this little baby looking at you.
Yeah. And I think for all the dads and, well, mums, but it's mainly guys who listen to this, but out there, they can totally relate to that. And your first baby or child, it's a really like trite and cliche thing to say. No one knows what it's like until it happens, and everyone says that, you're like, yeah, whatever. And then a baby turns up and you're like, what the fuck? Like, you genuinely can't prepare yourself for it. And then it happens. And then no matter what, it's a hard challenge thing. Yeah, it's amazing as well, right? Of course, it's the best thing that can ever happen to you. But I think we're not, as men, given a handbook to suddenly know how to be a great dad and know what to do. And it's not taking me. It sounds like I'm sorted. I'm not. My eldest now is nine and a bit. And I'm still constantly working on being a dad, but I feel like I'm a bit more in my groove now, at least. Well, that's taken 9 fucking years, right?
Yeah.
I was not like that off the bat. Some people go, oh, the second I saw them, that was me, and I just changed. Not me. I loved them and stuff, but I found it difficult and hard, and all the sort of patterns of behaviour that we've been brought up on as young men and going into adulthood, and then you get a baby thrown in, well, then straight away puts a big fucking neon sign on all of that, and you're like, whoa, I need to change, but I've changed, and they've got work, and so it's challenging, right?
Yeah, and there's probably a person that doesn't take enough credit in my story, which is my ever long-suffering wife. But like, because you kind of, and then this is, me, I don't mean to say, I don't really mean what I'm going to say here, but like, my wife was lucky enough just through our position to not have to rush to return to work. So you convince yourself, I'm working all week to bring home the money and all the rest of it, and then you've got this baby, and that's a horrible thing to say, but another job. And then it's like, well, then there's everything else of being a partner, husband, or whatever, that you then kind of don't have any energy or any time to do. And it's like, that's just so, in hindsight, that's just so fundamentally wrong, but you justify it because, I know, but I've got work tomorrow, so I can't do this particular task you need us to do right now. And actually what you're doing is, you're actually being rubbish person yourself, a rubbish husband, and a bare bones dad. And for me, it was like, I need to change this because this is not who I want to be.
Yeah, and again, thank you for being so honest and transparent. I can relate to that, and I'm sure lots of other guys can also relate to that. And it comes from that slightly sort of flipping it around victim sort of state of like, well, it's just me, and it's me versus the world. Don't you know how hard it is for me? Do you know how hard it is for a lady at home looking after a young baby? It's just as fucking
the hardest job in the world. Yeah, it's the hardest job in the world.
Well, because you're the breadwinner, it's all okay, and you deserve to be able to come over and drink and not have to do the X, Y, and Z. And so But again, that's pointing the lens everywhere else. And what we often have to do in these situations eventually sometimes is go, no, where's the mirror? Have a good fucking look. And I'm not saying just you,
Yeah.
Tony, I mean all of us, right?
No, I know.
And that's it, because ultimately all of that stuff you're describing, that's still there. And for me, it's about, well, what can I do to help and change the situations? And we have to often have a good hard look at ourselves and look at what we need to change, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? One of the things I said to you when we first started together was like, I've tried all these different gym programs, eating programs, bloody whatever you want to call it programs, right? And I do so well for a while, and then it just doesn't continue. And it's because they're all like stick and plaster approach. It's like treat the today, but actually what we did through your program was actually go all the way back. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't like, psychological therapy, but it was readdressing those key foundations and bringing in discipline, which none of us modern men have, proper discipline. And then by taking the sort of additional pressures off yourself, whether that be physically, mentally, spiritually, definitely boozing and dietary, you actually find that you have more mental capacity to deal with those things, and you start to just take it in your stride. And then you kind of look back and go like, what was I doing for so long? Like, why wasn't I doing that? I would say, honestly, anybody who knows me outside of this kind of podcast, they'll know that I've been saying this a long time. When I think back over the journey that I've been on to date, and certainly where I'm at now in terms of my family life, and particularly with my daughter, the only thing that I would change now is that I would have had her a long time ago. But the only reason why I think that I was able to be ready to have her as best I was because of the work that we did together. Because otherwise, I'd probably still be putting it off until I'm ready to be a dad.
Yeah.
And that's just mental. Now that I see it that way.
The reality is you're never ready. You've got no fucking
clue.
Never.
Right? No way.
if you're better armed, and this is the whole point, life is busy, stressful, there's always stuff going on. But like you just said there very succinctly, Tony, was that actually looking at the fundamental reasons as to why you aren't where you are and your part in that, and then starting to act and change that is ultimately more powerful, right? Because then you can show up as the person that you want and do the things that you need to do in order to be the good dad, the husband, and work and business as well, right? And it's threading that needle. When you're overwhelmed and you've got compounding bad habits in the background, it's quite hard to be objective and show up and do those things, because you're just sort of stuck in loops of behaviour which aren't really serving you. And yeah, every now and again you can try and bolt something on the top to help fix it, and acutely it might work for a week or two or a short period. We haven't really got to the fundamental as to what's going on, right?
No, and then what you do is you fall into this cycle of then self-defeat, right? So, I said I got a PT. I went to see him about 6 times, and I haven't been since. Therefore, I'm a failure. Therefore, it's even more difficult to motivate yourself to go and do it again. So it just kind of repeats itself. But I think the key thing is, like, nobody's going to do it for you, and you can piss and moan and point the finger of blame elsewhere, but until you take accountability of it, it's never going to change.
No, I think that's the main thing. There's something I pipe on about loads, which is, you are the problem, it's your fault, but you're the solution. And that's the beautiful bit. And if you can see that, that's the powerful bit. But again, if you're in a darker place, you're not feeling as good, it's hard to be able to see that or work out what you need to do. I said this to you on the phone the other day when we were arranging this chat. One of the quotes that you gave me, and I use this all the time because it's so great, which is this self-sabotage thing we talked about and you were just hinting at there. And just for clarity, this is Tony's quote he gave me, not one that I always give you credit. I say it's my client, Tony, years ago. And it's that, and the self-sabotage there, which is you're driving down the road, you get a puncture, like shit, then you jump out and stab the other 3 tyres. And it just beautifully illustrates that whole kind of like, well, I'm doing well, fuck it all. And I think we're often, all of us are so guilty of that, especially high performers and guys who are pretty driven and like to achieve. And I think more often than not, what we need to do to allow ourselves to get where we want is metaphorically get out of the car, get the puncture repair kit out, sort it out, and keep going, right? And I think that's sort of what we're talking about here, right?
Well, I might get into trouble depending on who actually sees this and listens all the way through to this. Look, but I personally found that, and I'm not being arrogant here, but I'm just going to say it the way it is, right? I'm good at what I do, and I'll always be good at what I do because I've got 20 years of experience and I've had all these ups and downs, and I've continued up this. It's not like this progression and growth or whatever. It's not like this. It's actually like this. But it has trended, for me, on paper, it's trended upwardly, whatever the hell that means, right? Financially, status, job title, right? But I was always my bare minimum of doing my job is still always going to be really good because I'm just good at my job. Yeah. So, like, Messi, right, is just always, I'm not saying I'm bloody Messi, right, but Messi's always going to be good at football, but he still has to do the training. He still has to do all the everything else. And
Yeah.
if he's like necking pints and smoking cigarettes and, he's not going to be on top. So my just bare minimum was still good enough to operate the job that I had.
Yeah.
But I was holding myself back so much by taking away the capability of doing more, whether that was in or out of work. For me specifically, probably more out of work that I was basically not putting the effort into and focusing my entire self-worth on, I have to be the best at my job. And it's like, now that I think back, I'm like, God, that I'm sad. I feel really bad for that guy. Like, I wish I could tell him, like, it's not that deep.
No, but also the people I think that we respect the most of those driven people are the ones that go, he's got his shit together, but he's just gone and watched his daughter play football and he cares, and you hear him talking about his wife and his other things, not just this absolutely anally retentive, hyper-driven people. I don't think, well, perhaps maybe it depends on the age you're at. Maybe if we had this conversation when we were in our 20s, maybe it would be a different kettle of fish. I don't know. But I know now, not that it's all airy-fairy. You want to see people drive and succeed and be the best, like you just described, and you do. But equally, I think when you see that coming in a well-rounded place, and but he's also X, Y, and Z, I think that for me commands more respect. But also, it's sort of something that I want to be and would aspire to be as well, right?
Yeah, and I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I kind of alluded to it before. Like, everybody's on a personal journey. It's not about what age you are, but it kind of is, right? But I feel like I kind of done my time in the trenches, earning my stripes in work land to get to a point where, actually, do you know what? This doesn't mean that you're not trying as hard. It just means that the responsibilities and the deliverables are different. And I've always been really good at supporting other people. Like, ironically, I'm really good at giving advice. I'm really good at mentoring people.
Yeah.
But I just do not take my own medicine. And you were the first person that actually made us take my own medicine, and probably a bit more, to be honest. But anybody, again, who knows me will know, like, surely Tony's, like, always, like, up here on top of his game. It's like, no, absolutely not. But when it comes to other people, I'll go out my way. I'll, like, die on my sword for them, But there you go.
And that's the other thing. I want to touch on kind of some of the stuff that we discussed offline and like where you've been and what's happened since we worked together, because I think that's going to be very powerful and interesting. But before that, something you were talking about there is that you've always been driven and you always know you're competent because you've got 20 years experience, right? That's career capital, just 100%. Yeah. But it's like going down the motorway in second gear, that, like, insofar as you're doing it, and of course you'll do it, but it's not efficient. And because you're putting the wrong petrol in the engine and you're revving the fuck out of it, like, you're going to get to the point you need to, but it's not done in such a way. So then there's very little elsewhere left. Hence I'm not really showing up because I want it at home as well, right?
Yeah, but that's the point, right? And it's not just even about that journey, like, to elaborate on that metaphor, right? You've also done damage to the bloody engine. You've also, like, there's now grit in the yeah. So, like, in reality, it's like, it's kind of a case of, well, I'll tell you what happened, actually. It's probably a really good, it's probably a really good jumping off point. So I had got into a really good place post our program, and stupidly enough, even though you specifically said don't do this, I did it anyway. It's just like, oh, I'm 6 now, I'm great now. I can now crack on, and I've completed the course, and therefore I'm a fully finished article, right? What a moron. Obviously, like, lots of things happened, but anyway, about 2 months, I mean, my timelines on this conversation is a bit all over the place, but about 2 months after my daughter was born, I was in London. I was working away. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning in my hotel room, and I had chest pains. I was struggling to kind of breathe. I thought I was having a panic attack, to be honest, because I had them historically, just like, 3-year course, right? It felt like that, but when I say I was sweating, it was like nothing I've ever experienced. You would have thought I just got out of the shower. I was drenched. So 5 in the morning, got my phone out, Google the symptoms, and it's like 999. So me being me, I didn't dial 999. I just got an Uber from the hotel to the hospital. But I must have looked rough, right? Because the Uber driver, bless him, he didn't stop at any red lights. He just drummed it to the hospital. I walked into A&E, and it's bad when they don't even take your details. They just take you straight through the doors. So anyway, fast forward a couple of hours. I was hooked up to this heart monitor, pumped full of morphine, trying to figure out what was going on. And what they were saying was, you haven't gone into a cardiac arrest, but there's something not quite right. Asking us all these questions about my health, about my lifestyle, etc. And the thing that was scary was I've never had any cardiac problems. I've never had any major illness. Nothing like critical or chronic, as you would call it. Had football injuries, but they don't count, right? So anyway, they're going, something's not right here. Like, we're asking them all these questions. Something's not right. Anyway, they leave us to it. And when my heart rate, blood pressure on this machine dropped to a certain level, the machine would go like, boo, boo, boop, right? It went from boo, boo, boop to boo, 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 to then all these alarms going off, right? And the only thing that I can describe it is, if you have a peephole in a door and you look through to see who it is, the whole world went like that. And I was trying to shout for help and I was just going like this, and I couldn't do anything. Doors swing open, rushed us into resuscitation. They were basically like, you're about to go into cardiac arrest. We need your phone and your wallet, so your phone and your watch off you. And if there's anybody you need to speak to, now's the time. So I had to send a goodbye WhatsApp to my wife in case I was about to die. And everything just happens in a blur, right? I was in and out of consciousness. I was pumped full of goodness knows what. Fast forward a few hours, I was back on the water, didn't go into cardiac arrest. What they said was my blood pressure dropped so low that I actually was nearly having a stroke. And that's what those symptoms were when the world was closing off. It was the oxygen not getting to my brain. And I was this close to having a stroke. Anyway, imagine spending then the following week alone in hospital in London with your thoughts racing. Like, I did a lot of soul searching there. And I kind of was... I've been told this is the wrong thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. But as I was sending that message to my wife at early hours of the morning saying, look, I don't know if I'm going to make it, kind of goodbye, I actually had a feeling of just shame. And I was just like, it was embarrassing. I was like, if that really was my last day on earth, that's an absolute fucking joke. Like, I shouldn't, that's not how I want to go out. When I go out, I want to go out with a sense of, do you know what? I did my best. I'm proud. Who knows when it's going to be? You could be hit by a bus tomorrow, but I wasn't hit by a bus. I was not looking after myself. I was burning the candle. I was doing all the things I shouldn't have. And ironically, for me personally, being an absolute rocket, like I am, it's almost a shame that it took something so severe like that to be my reality check, because the decision was taken out of my hands. It was, my body was like, if you do not do something about this, next time you might be dead.
Yeah.
Now, there's no bigger reality check and wake-up call than being told, say goodbye to anyone you need to say goodbye to. Yeah. I'm very pleased to say, by the way, there has been, it was like a sort of, what's the word? Like an acute infection that I'd had in my heart. Okay. So I'm actually okay now, but the professor at the end of the week, and I was getting to the point at the end of the week where they couldn't pinpoint it to anything specific. I didn't have chronic heart disease. I didn't have anything sinister. He just kind of came in. He was just like, look, this, if nothing else, is the universe telling you that you need to make some changes. So when I came out, I actually dismissed myself from hospital, which is a little bit stupid, but it's because I just wanted to come home. I wanted to see Danielle and the baby. And I basically from that moment on said, next time I ever come close to death's door, it has to be as an old man having been looking back on a happy life of everything I wanted to do. And you know what? Admittedly, at no point when I was in hospital that week recovering did I wish I'd done more work or done more, had more bonuses or
a few more emails. Exactly.
Yeah, it was actually, I wish I'd spent more time. I wish I'd told people things that I hadn't told them. I wish I'd spent more time with my family. I wish I'd made more time for this. It was always about the things that I didn't do, not a single thing about what I did do. And you know what, mate? That was the biggest light bulb moment of my entire life. Yeah. So anyway, I've done a lot of talking there. There's quite a lot to take in as well.
I mean, that's I know, because you purposely didn't tell me what had happened, so we could discuss it now. And that's a very, very powerful realization. And I think just digesting that a little bit as you're talking, there's in sort of certain recovery circles, 12-step programs, they talk about rock bottoms. And I know this isn't in terms of substance abuse or alcohol you're talking, but it sounds like that was a physiological rock bottom for you in terms of it was like, well, like you said, you can't get a more visceral sort of way of like, well, you almost died essentially, right? And
Yeah.
so it's you can't get any more existential than that. And I think you used the word shame when you sent that message. That's a real powerful, deep, unpleasant emotion. But I think in a way, it sounds really weird. It's good because it shows you that, well, like I don't want this, and I've been giving a reprieve here. Like I've been given a massive fucking time out, and I can go, oh, I can now change this, right? And so actually, it's like, well, what can I do to address that? And so, like you said, you don't know whatever's going to happen next, but I think then if you're changing that and stacking the deck in your favor and doing what you can, well, then that's a completely different kettle of fish. There's a quote I heard a while ago, which is somewhere in the future, there's a version of yourself looking back on you now, whether it's with nostalgia or regret, depends on your actions today. And I think it's that. And I think probably what the event highlighted for you was you're not living that. You're looking back with regret right there. And what
You
you want to
know,
do is go, fuck, in the pearly gates, I've just been done by a
yeah,
bus.
yeah,
Well, it won't go bad.
yeah, yeah.
I did my bit, right?
Yeah, actually, do you know what? Maybe regret's the more realistic word than
Yeah.
shame, because shame implies that I've done it to myself or something I
Yeah.
don't know. But
Yeah.
you know, that's actually probably a fair. That's why when I say that, a lot of people go, "No, what are you on about?" And it's like, well, but anyway, regret, definitely regret. It was like, how have I let this happen? I don't know. You said there was no like substance and alcohol abuse. Well, it's not that I was some sort of in some sort of like status of addiction or recovery or anything, but I definitely was doing all the wrong things and
Yeah.
drinking too much and not looking after myself. So okay, I wasn't like a drinking alcohol every day kind of job, but I still was abusing it. Like, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
And I guess
he's
that's going to have a bearing on how you're feeling and showing up, right?
100%, and then it just robs yourself, you know. So yeah, look, I mean, I know you weren't expecting all that. There's been a few times recently. So recently, now that I've kind of spent a bit of time getting myself a bit fitter and healthier and started doing more and more outward facing work, I've bumped into a load of people that I haven't seen during this whole couple of year period. And I didn't make a whole spiel about it. I didn't really tell anyone because it was so personal why I was sort of missing. But loads of people recently, I've been seeing them again. They're like, "Where have you been?" And like, I then tell them this story, and they're all like, absolutely mind blowing. But
Yeah.
do you know what's been really nice? Like again, and in reflection, is they all say things like this: "You look great," or like, they're like, you're a totally different person for all the right reasons, you know, and that shows that whatever I have been doing since had this kind of second go, if you like, has clearly been, I guess, the right thing. And do you know what most of this has been? Shifting my own mindset. I have cut lots of bad vices out of my life and have been trying to be physically more active and all that kind of good stuff. But the biggest change for me is that I don't have anywhere near as much pressure on myself. I realized that it's not that important. What's actually important is we do what we do to be able to afford the life that we want to have. And actually, it's not really about working every day with your foot flat to the mat, trying to hit this kind of proverbial success. It's just about being comfortable in what you've got. And like, for me, it's just been about buying back a lot of the time that I was spending doing all these things that didn't really have real value and reinvesting it with my daughter, my dog, and my wife.
Well, like last time we had probably chatted was like, say, a few years ago, Tony. It was after we finished and you were in a really good spot. But like by a country mile, you look better, sound better. You just tell like the energy coming off you is just so different, and that's coming off something that's on the face of it really horrendous, right? But that's the beauty of the whole obstacle is the way concept, which is actually some of the worst, most challenging, difficult things that ever happened to you. You'd never consciously wish it on yourself in a million years. But actually, off the back of that, the period of growth and change and learning is massive. And this is a prime example of that. And what it's helped you do, it sounds like, and I don't want to speak out of turn because you're on mine, not me, but it sounds like it's helped you reframe and readdress what is actually important and what the priorities in life. But this doesn't mean, I think this is this thing where you're not off living in a fucking cave being a monk, right? You're still fully engaged with your job. You're still pushing that. You're a loving dad. You're there where you need to be. But just letting a bit of that pressure off to go, hold up a second, it isn't the be all and end all. But that doesn't mean you don't care. Like, people like to be so black and white. Well, oh, you don't give a fuck about your job. No, I absolutely love it and I'm passionate and I'm great at it. But it doesn't define me and it's not who I am. And actually, when you let that pressure off, you can be fucking great at it and be a great dad.
And
See what I mean?
yeah,
And be a great husband.
yeah,
And I think it's just that it's that there's a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's like just giving a fuck a bit less goes so much further, right? And then allows you to enjoy the fruits of your labour, but without killing yourself in the process. Quite literally, in your case, right?
Yeah, well, I'll say something in a second, but just in case my wife does listen to this, I don't know if you picked up, I said my daughter, my dog, and my wife's in that order.
Yeah.
That was, I just thought, oh God, I've got to say that. That was just, it rolled off the tongue better, right? No, like, nobody sets out to become an alcoholic. Nobody wakes up and goes, do you know what? I'm going to drink myself to early death. Or nobody wakes up and thinks, I know what I'm going to become like a massive drug addict and, ruin or gambling or whatever your vice is. It happens as a byproduct of not being fully satisfied or whatever it is. I know that we'll not get too scientific, but like dopamine and the application of it, but it ultimately comes from not being happy in the day to day. So you need to constantly add things so like I say, like, I wish I could have found another way to have this eureka moment that didn't involve me being so ill in hospital. But that was my journey. And I suppose the only reason I find these things a bit awkward, but the reason why I wanted to do this with you was because I don't want somebody else to have to get to where I was to have that same revelation. Let me have done it for you. Nobody else needs to do that. But, I certainly didn't set out to be rushed into hospital at 36 years old and be told, say your goodbyes. It was a product of lots and lots and lots of bad choices. And then burying those bad choices with more bad choices. And before you know it, because you've got this normal job and everyone thinks you're good at your job, you think, oh, well, I'm not a bad person and I'm not wrecking myself, so I must be doing well. And then all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, your body can only take so much.
Yeah, there's levels to where you're at in terms of what we're talking about. But equally, yours is an extreme example of where you can end up, but none of it is consciously chosen. It's all those little paper cuts of 1%. I talk about the 1%, my business is called the 1%, but like they compound both ways. And so, like, it's not one thing. Like, you don't wake up and go, right, I want to nearly have an heart attack next week because I'm going to mad. It's like, no, it actually all comes from a well-intentioned place, really. You want to provide, you want to be successful, you want to be, but like, it starts to get to a point where it's like the law of diminishing returns. And then to manage how you're coping with that, you have all these other compounding negative behaviors that sort of don't serve you. And so the net result is where you end up. Whereas if you just take a little, if one takes a step back and goes, well, I'm not feeling great now, where am I at? I have got it within my gift to control and address that. You totally can. And then it's about those little 1%. So I don't just mean my business. I mean, just generally those little things we need to do. But then overall, they can then compound and get you to a good place, right?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So all those little micro decisions that I was making for years that ultimately led us to that rock bottom, so to speak, have also been this. I haven't really done anything like major. I didn't come out and suddenly find, I'm not against religion and all that, but I didn't come out and find God and I've been going to church every week and now I'm a better person. So like, I didn't have that much of a profound experience, but nevertheless, like, because my mindset and my priorities have changed, I did things that allowed me to prioritize that. And what I've found is, it's all fine and well me telling you about all the bad stuff I've been through, but it's probably more relevant to tell you about where I'm at now. So because I had decided that, this corporate environment, that I kind of didn't really need to do that anymore. It wasn't good for me. It was just going to throw me straight back into the same environment that I was used to. So I did take some time out. I did then start to reach out to people that I know already and say, look, this has happened to us, but I'm available for a bit of work. You get this little bit of a snowball effect that I was able to pick and choose work that I liked doing, that I knew I was good at, where there wasn't the same internal and external pressures. That job turned into another job, turned into another job. And before you know it, I was in a position recently where I've actually been having to direct opportunities to other people that I know, because I could do them, but it would be at the cost of what the things I said I was going to buy back. I don't want to work late nights at the minute. I don't want to, be traveling as much. So I've done enough to keep everything that we've got, like the sort of, what's the word? the status quo.
Yeah, it sounds like you haven't intentionally tried to sort of ramp it up or push it or grow it because you're like, oh my god, I've got opportunities. Well, maybe I could manage other people,
Yeah,
and so turn it into something else. Like, no, I said what I wanted, and the state of life that I'm
yeah,
at right now is where I'm at, and it's what I want. And actually, I don't need to commit anymore, and I'm comfortable where I'm at. Now, equally, in 10 years, when your daughter and your new baby's older and whatever, you might be like, you know what, it's a different season. I want to give it a bit of a nudge, and I
yeah.
can because life's different. But right now, that's okay. And it doesn't have to be binary yes or no, but where you are right now, that's your priority and that's what matters for myself and business. Like, I work hard. I love my job. I love my business. I love my clients. I love what we're talking about. I'm really passionate about what I do. But I've got three relatively young kids, 9, 6, and 4, which is their birthday, so I remember. And part of value of my business and working for myself is I've got autonomy over my time. Could I work harder, probably make a bit more money? I probably could. But for where I'm at in my life right now, that is me having time and autonomy to be with my kids and to be able to do that is really powerful. Now, again, in a few years when they're a bit older and whatnot and things change, might I want to pivot that thinking? Probably, yeah. And that can almost flex and flow within the day to day as well. But I think just being clear on where you're at and what's important, not, right, I want to be successful there, I'm going to work myself to death and just ignore everything else, which is unfortunately most people's operating manuals. But it's not like it's detracted from your material or career success either, has it? Quite the opposite, So
It's, the bonkers thing is, and I don't know how appropriate it is to talk about this stuff, but like, let's just say I'm in the best position I've been in terms of, business income, in terms of health, in terms of family life, in terms of waking up in the morning not feeling too stressed about anything. Yeah. And ironically, it's because of this major change of mindset, because I don't feel like I need to go out and get after it. What I've found is actually lots more opportunities have presented themselves to me, and I've been in a much better place to either say, actually, look, do you know what? I can't help you with that, but I know someone who can. And then they go away and do a good job. But then randomly they get a job in, and then they go, oh, well, Tony will sort me out that time. I'll sort him out this time. And actually all those kind of little micro decisions are now kind of piling up and making new opportunities. Whereas previously they would have been robbing us and taking them away. I don't know if I think you know what I'm trying to say.
No, exactly. But then all those little things would take up your headspace. You worry about it, you stress about it. And it's just being more conscious and intentional about where you're at and being able to make those decisions. Whereas I reckon if the version of you prior to that situation happening with your heart had heard you say, what, you turned down what an opportunity? You'd have probably slapped yourself. You'd have been like, what about? Whereas actually now you're like, well, of course I'm going to, because I don't want that. And that's the whole change in mindset. Well, Tony, it's been an absolutely awesome and powerful conversation. I know 100% anyone watching, listening to this, we're going to get absolutely tons out of that. Let's say somebody's watching this, and like you just said there, you want people to learn from where you're at. Perhaps there's levels, but like they're feeling as you were maybe when we first spoke, or in that kind of sort of busy, hectic, but sort of can't see the wood for the trees. What do I do? Like, what would you say to someone in that position as you sit today, have gone on the journey that you've gone on?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is it's not that deep. It's like absolutely fine to feel terrible. It's actually a really powerful and really brave thing to sit back and realize that you're not happy and you need help. But it's what you actually do thereafter. Because I sat many and many a time, as I said to you, looking for the next fix, looking for the next sticky closer to the source of what my issues were. And for me, call it fate or intervention or what, but that decision was made for me when I took poorly. Like, I was in hospital. It was like, if you don't do something about this now, you might not make it next time. Don't let that happen to you, but you still need to almost pretend right now that has been done to you. Yeah. And what you need to do is, as we mentioned during this conversation, is what are your actual priorities? Because I can tell you now, when you're in hospital on your own for a week, it's not work. It's about the stuff that you didn't make time for, and it's about the stuff that you didn't do. And when you start, it's not about then not trying hard at work or asking for, less responsibilities. It's just about go and do that to enable you to do these other things, to be able to have the family holidays, to be able to have the whatever it is that you're into. So for me, it's like, don't beat yourself up, because actually it's completely within the realms of your ability to change. But if you don't do something about it, then you're still going to be doing this next year and the year after that. And the year after that might be when you're rushed into A&E, you know?
Yeah, I love what you said there, because it's that ultimately no one's going to come and save you. It is you who is responsible, and not in a beat yourself up in a harsh way, but that's it. Um, but equally, and if nothing changes, nothing changes. But you're the one who can change it,
Yeah.
and that's the truth. And so once you really acknowledge that, then you kind of set free and you can work on it. Now, it doesn't mean there might not be a journey of a fair bit of work to do, physically, mentally, emotionally, and that's what it is. You've been on that journey. I've done stuff myself. The guys I work with, it's the same. But once you acknowledge that, I'm not where I want to be. I need to change. My priorities aren't straight. Okay, that's shit. Well, now we can do something.
Yeah.
And the person who can do something is you. And for me, that's the most empowering part of it, right? You might not know what you're doing. That's why people like me can help, and that's fine. But even outside of that, then you can start to make a change. But until you really acknowledge that part, you stay stuck, right?
Yeah. Well, I would kind of, I like my little analogies. I think this is stolen from BoJack Horseman, but all these like little yo-yo sessions I've been on, like lost a bit of weight through this, done a bit of good this year, and then ultimately fallen back. It's like, it's not hard to do it, but it's turning up and doing it every day. That's the difficult thing. And that's what I've managed to buy myself back, is that mind space and that determination, if you want to call it that. But the priority is, no, I'm happy with what I've got and I want to maintain that for as long as possible. And you know what? What you'll find is new things and new exciting prospects will come along just being on that journey alone.
Totally.
But if you only keep going the way you're going, then it's only going to end one way. And
Yeah. Keep doing the same thing, you get the same outcome, right? That's the thing.
yeah,
Or
that's it.
it starts to compound. Well, look, Tony, that's been an amazing chat. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for coming on. I've got absolutely loads out of this. I've loved it. And I know anyone who is watching and listening will definitely too. If anyone is watching this and they're thinking, I'm a bit stuck, don't know what to do, I can help. That's the sort of thing I can help with. So if you're interested, drop me a DM or a comment and we can talk about how I can help. But outside of that, like Tony was saying, it's within everyone's gift to change. If you have a look and you don't like what you see, then get your hands dirty and do something about it. On that note, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Everyone else, we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.